Hey, how's it going? Okay, Juror B29, Maddie. She's the one minority that was on the jury. And she definitely has some things to say on ABC, and I wanted to talk about it. Apparently, she's an emotional wreck after finding out that the world was upset over the verdict, and she's freaking out over it. She was the one person who voted guilty on second-degree murder and then later on found out that the law didn't support such a verdict.
To ask the jurors a very tough question.
Some people have said George Zimmerman got away with murder. How do you...
So my question is, and listen carefully, is she repeating the question or is she saying that George got away with murder? Listen.
respond to those people who say that?
George Zimmerman got away with murder, but you can't get away from God.
Juror B.
I think she was saying, repeating the question, and then her answer was, but you can't get away with God, from God. Personally, I think it was a stupid comment because how can you even say George Zimmerman got away with murder if you're the juror that voted him not guilty?
29, Maddie, came forward today in an ABC News exclusive interview. She said it wasn't an easy decision.
It's hard for me to sleep. It's hard for me to eat.
You have an...
So she can't eat, she can't sleep. What's this sound like to the average person? Sounds like an emotional uh, issue. She's got something going on. It's completely emotional, and it wasn't an issue until after the jury was released. Once she got out and she was able to hear what the community was saying.
asked for money, you haven't asked for a book deal, you haven't asked for anything other than a forum to be able to tell your story.
Money, money, money.
I don't need money. No money in this world could pay me to forget the pain that I'm going through. Trayvon Martin will always be in my heart.
But she wanted to talk about the verdict, how the jury reached it, and about what she sees as perhaps a higher justice.
At the end of the day, he's going to have a lot of questions and answers he has to deal with.
I've noticed this, in a lot of my videos, I pointed out that Trayvon supporters say at the end of the day all the time. I'm going to go back and listen to her comments in the questionnaire before she got selected because I want to see exactly what her what her thoughts were on the law at the time and what her thoughts were on self-defense. Because personally, I think that she doesn't understand the law, she doesn't understand self-defense, and she doesn't understand God's law. So, she's trying to make judgments for God based on an incomplete knowledge of God's wishes and wills.
The law couldn't prove it. We just have to believe in the Lord that if he has to pay, he will pay.
Maddie says putting her emotions aside and only considering the law was not easy.
I stand by the decision because of the law.
So she was very difficult for her to set aside her emotions so that she could make a verdict based on the law. Amazing.
If I stand by the decision because of my heart, he would have been guilty.
So remember in the closing statements, the prosecution tried to get the jurors to focus on what was in their heart, feelings, emotions. Ignore the evidence, ignore the facts of the case, just focus on those parents sitting over there that have lost a 17-year-old son. That's what they wanted you to do. Well, 5 of the jurors had enough common sense and sense to realize that you have to judge people based on the law and what's right according to common people, what people generally would think is the right thing to do. It's called reasonableness. So when the jury found George not guilty, it was based on reasonableness. That means that people in general would have done the same thing if they were put in the same position. So the 5 jurors, well, at least 3 of them agreed immediately. And then later on, 2 more came along because they realized that the law protects George for a good reason.
A 36-year-old mother of 8 who calls herself a black Hispanic was the only minority on the jury. Since the verdict and the public backlash, she says she has been ridden with guilt.
I feel that I was forcibly included in Trayvon Martin's death.
See, that is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. There is no doubt about it that this woman should not have been on the jury. She should never be on a jury again. She is not a proper juror. The fact that she finally came around and found him not guilty after being prodded for 19 hours, it's no, that is no bonus to me. She should not be on the jury. Personally, I think that before you could sit on a jury, you should have an IQ test. You should have a test to test your knowledge on the law, the basics of the law, especially in a self-defense case. Do you understand self-defense? Do you understand that when someone's got you down on the ground and they're cracking your head on the skull, your skull on the concrete, that you have some sort of a right to defense? This lady obviously doesn't believe so. But why? Why? Because emotions have filled her head. She doesn't have any space in her head because of her heart has filled up her brain with all this emotion.
Shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin brought the issue of race in America back to the forefront. After Zimmerman's acquittal, outrage ignited across the country.
So how do you respond when you see people who are making this about race, who are saying, had Trayvon not been a young black man, that the conversation would be different?
Is it true? That's a question to be asked.
Even the
So she doesn't know if it's true?
president brought it up.
There are very few African American men in this country who haven't had the experience of being followed when they were shopping in a department store. That includes me.
Just like Obama, I go to a lot of places and I get people to follow me sometimes.
So this interview was after she heard the reaction from all the psychotic people, including Obama. So she listened to Obama's speech, and afterwards she's like, oh, this is terrible. I can't believe I voted against the president.
Trayvon Martin's parents' reaction to the verdict echoes the feelings of many Americans.
I really didn't believe that he was not guilty.
While George Zimmerman
It's not about belief. It's about the facts of the case.
has remained silent, his parents spoke to ABC News, offering an apology to Trayvon's family.
We are deeply sorry.
They don't apologize because they feel that George did something wrong. They apologize because they understand as parents that losing a child is a terrible thing. That's why they apologize. They feel sorry for the Martins. But that is classy people. What about the Martins? Wouldn't they come to this family and say, we're so sorry that you had to go through this? We understand as parents what a horrible thing this must have been for you, whether or not you agree with the verdict.
For this tragedy.
But for Trayvon Martin's parents, Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin, the fight for justice continues as they consider a civil suit.
It's not just about the Trayvon Martin case. Now it's about your kids. It's about other kids.
2 days after the verdict, another juror, B37, spoke to Anderson Cooper on CNN.
I think both were responsible for the situation they had gotten themselves into. I think both of them could have walked away.
There were some things that the other jurors said that you wanted to respond to.
B37 used the word we. I guess because we were in the jury together, she put it all as in a group. And the way she made a lot of us sound was, we walk by color. And that's not what I do.
I really didn't hear that in B37's comments. I don't know what she's talking about. We walk by color? You know, that's the problem that I have, and that's the problem I have with the blacks and the Trayvon supporters, whether they're black or white. The problem I have with those people is they don't care about the law. They have in their heart the emotions. Oh, poor Trayvon. He beat that guy up, and then that guy pulled out a gun. Why couldn't that guy have just laid there and let him beat him? You know, it's the most ignorant thing I've ever heard.
And that was something that a lot of people from the outside thought must have been a discussion in the deliberations about race, about color, but that wasn't the case?
It was not the case.
In their first vote, B37 told CNN 3 jurors wanted not guilty. 1 wanted murder, second degree, and 2 wanted manslaughter.
What was your first vote?
My first vote was second-degree murder.
How did you go from, in 9 hours, from feeling he was guilty of second-degree murder to not guilty?
In between the 9 hours, it was hard. A lot of us had wanted to find something bad, something that we could connect to the law, because for myself, he's guilty.
He's guilty. For myself, he's guilty. I don't know why. I can't find anything in the law that makes him guilty. There is, the law says that he's allowed to kill people that are trying to hurt him, but in my heart, in my emotions, a 17-year-old baby. Oh, give me a break.
Because the evidence shows he's guilty.
He's guilty of
killing Trayvon Martin.
The evidence shows he's guilty of killing Trayvon Martin. This is why I say certain people should not be on the jury, on any jury. And I hope that after her comments are aired, that the state of Florida removes her name from possible jurors ever again. Number one, she wanted to rule based on emotion. Terrible. Number two, she was swayed. Listen, if you believe in your heart's a specific verdict, and then you're swayed because the other jurors went the other way, you should not be on the jury. Listen, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. Stick to it. If you believe in your heart that George committed murder and you voted not guilty, you're an evil bitch that should go to hell and stay there. But if you went with the law and you followed the instructions of the court, then you did the right thing.
But as the law was read to me, if you have no proof that he killed them intentionally, you can't say he's guilty.
what was going on.
So this is real important because she doesn't even have the slightest clue about the law, even after reading it. She still doesn't understand the law. Nowhere in the law does it say you have to know that George was guilty, that George was planning it. That's premeditated. She doesn't even have a clue. Listen on.
In your mind, your heart.
I was a juror that was going to give him the hung jury. Oh, I was. I fought to the end.
Do you have regrets that you didn't?
Kind of. I mean, I'm the only minority, and I felt like I let a lot of people down.
She let a lot of people down. She was the only minority. So everything was fine until she went home and she turned on the TV and she's like, oh my goodness, what did I do? And all these people are on the TV, black people for the most part, freaking out about this whole case and how they were let down and how the jury let them down. So this woman took it upon her shoulders because she was the only one there that is of color. So she just said, I let a lot of people down. Who'd she let down? Those people who ignore the law.
This polarizing case began in a gated community in Sanford, Florida. On February 26, 2012, Martin was walking back to a house where he and his father were staying. He caught the attention of the self-appointed neighborhood watch captain George Zimmerman, who called police.
This guy looks like he's... Oh my God! It's so...
One calls were believed to be crucial pieces of evidence.
Whose voice did you think it was on the 911 call?
I have never really paid mind to whose voice it was. Because
this is a juror who listened to the arguments, and she never even considered who was screaming on the tape.
the evidence shows that people's voices change when you're in extreme motion.
During the trial,
people's voices change, but that doesn't mean that people can't recognize the voice. Maybe she didn't listen to all the testimony. Remember the guy that was in the Army and he said he could recognize the screaming voices of the men that he worked with in the military? and he knew where they were, or he knew their voices, and he could go to them because he knew who they were. So it's like she listened to the testimony of one side that said you really can't tell, and that's true. Technically speaking, they can't use computers to figure it out, but people can, and that's what they said.
Well, the FBI's audio expert did testify that it is impossible to tell who was screaming for help during their 16 hours.
That isn't the truth. He didn't say it's impossible to tell who was screaming. He said it's impossible for the computer based on the limited information that it had. Holy smokes.
Of deliberations, the consideration of a possible manslaughter verdict weighed heavily on Maddie.
When you all sent that note to the judge asking for an explanation on manslaughter, what was that about?
What we were trying to figure out was manslaughter. In order to be charged, we had to prove that when he left home, he said, I'm going to go kill Trayvon Martin.
See, that's where she is just totally in la la land. I mean, the instructions don't say anything about that. The law doesn't say anything about that. Where did she get this crap? I mean, it is stupidity. Nowhere in the law or in the instructions does it say that. All she had to do was listen to the instructions. Let's listen to her comments again.
In order to be charged, we had to prove that when he left home, he said, I'm going to go kill Trayvon Martin.
And that wasn't it. Now remember, when they sent that request to the judge, I made a video about it, and I brought out that part in the instructions about the manslaughter charge and how it was confusing. But then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see that Stand Your Ground covered all that, because there was a difference between justified homicide, which George did, and the other possibility, which was excusable homicide, which is, there's justified and excusable, two separate things. So let me take a look here, and you can see the question that they were having that was confusing them was, in manslaughter, you can be excused if it was an accident. There's 3 possible accidents, and one of them was heat of passion. And remember, Juror B29 said that heat of passion and Stand Your Ground. So she was pointing to this, and that's why she's totally confused, because the part about accidental, that's what the whole question of excusable homicide had to do with. It's excusable when it's an accident. So that was the argument they were having, and the questions they were having. Was it an accident, or did George mean to kill him at the moment he pulled the trigger? And this lady's confused because she's thinking about when George left his house. Has nothing to do with that. That's all about premeditated. This is not premeditated. So she was confused, and if she knew the confusion, maybe she would have voted guilty, even though the facts of the case showed that he was absolutely not guilty, because it was self-defense.
Own lawyer, David Chico, says even legal experts would have been confused.
And I've thought a lot about it, and I haven't really been able to come up with, with really another charge. Except, I think manslaughter was a charge that could be put forth.
Maddie's.
Yeah, they put forth manslaughter. It didn't stick, and the reason, and this lawyer's trying to explain to her, well, I tried to figure it out, and well, they could have put forth that one. Yeah, they put forth that manslaughter, but it didn't work. It just doesn't fit. Why? Because, and I'm going to say it one last time, self-defense trumps all laws. Self-defense trumps all laws. If you're defending your life, you can break any law in that process.
Says she had no idea that the world was watching so closely.
Solidarity!
After the jury was released, She says she crumbled as the negative news reports about their verdict erupted.
Well, that's the final. That finishes her off. That proves that she absolutely needed to be sequestered, no doubt about it. Because if she would have heard these people before the trial or during the trial, she would have voted differently, just based on emotion.
I literally fell on my knees and I broke down. My husband was holding me. I was screaming and crying. And I kept saying to myself, I feel like I killed him. And
how ridiculous. Thank God that 5 of the women were at least not so emotional. Thank God that they were able to sway this lady because she definitely should never have been a juror. So my argument is in this video that this woman is completely out of control. She should have never been a juror. And the fact that ABC brought her on to try to make people think that she was the right one and all the rest were wrong just makes them look stupid. I mean, I can't even believe that they brought her on. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up. Good talking to you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.